Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 76 of the Playoff Push podcast. I'm your host, Jack Dobbins, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Kris Bubic, All-Star for the Kansas City Royals. How we doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me here.
Of course, it's great to finally talk to you. It's been a few months in the making, but we finally got here right as spring training is starting. I'm just going to lead it off in here. How is spring training going?
It's going well. We're a couple days into camp now. I'm feeling good and looking forward to facing hitters for the first time actually tomorrow. So we'll start games here in about a week, next weekend, and then go from there.
Perfect, perfect. One thing about spring training I wanted to lead off this show with is you always see the pitchers and catchers reporting. Some people don't necessarily know the difference between pitchers and catchers reporting and the entire start of everybody at spring training. What makes that difference for a ball player?
Yeah, so a lot of spring training is tailored, I guess, for some context. A lot of spring training is tailored towards the pitchers, especially the starting pitchers, just because you need time to build up the pitch count, the innings, and all that. So usually pitchers and catchers will come in about a week or so earlier, before the rest of the position players usually file in, just because they're at bats. They maybe need a couple weeks and they feel like they're ready, as opposed to in my case, I'm a starting pitcher, so usually we're taking our time. We're making sure we're progressing properly through our buildup, and by the end of 6, 7 weeks or 2 months or so, we're ready to go to the regular season, throwing 75, 80 pitches, and up from there.
Perfect. One thing I saw actually recently, I think it was Wednesday, was a report that you're fully healthy with no restrictions after the injury that occurred last season. What's your main focus as you prepare for this season, knowing that?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's always a blessing to be fully healthy at the start of the year. For me, it always comes back to health now. Not that I've had a ton of injuries, but just the significance of the injuries with the elbow a few years back, and then with the shoulder, missing the last 2 months of last season. But for me, yeah, health first and foremost, because I want to be on the field with our guys. Obviously, I really love the guys we have in the clubhouse, and even last year we had a fair share of injuries in the rotation, myself included, and we were still pretty competitive until the final weeks of the season. And making the playoffs the year before, that's a feeling we want again. So for me, I want to be out there, um, you know, with the guys, win with the guys, and I think that's a feeling that we want back in Kansas City, and that's a feeling I want back myself, and I know everybody in the clubhouse does as well.
Another one of the arms that was down at the end of last season was Cole Reagan's. He's coming back with you, and I saw the same report. He's also healthy and getting ready. What does that pitching rotation mean to you as a teammate, especially with Cole Reagan's?
For sure, yeah. Cole and I, being left-handed, we're fairly competitive. Neither of our careers have been straight lines. We've had ups and downs, and but to have him and the rest of the guys in the rotation, filled in really nicely last year, and even the last couple seasons now, our teams have been predicated on pitching and defense. So I think running it back with the same group we have a good mix of young guys and veteran guys as well, to be able to carry the pitching staff, and that's what we intend to do. And Royals baseball in general, and a lot of teams will say this, but for us, it definitely starts with pitching and defense, and that's the way we intend to keep it.
How does your routine preparing for games change throughout spring training into the regular season, and then as we saw a couple years ago in the postseason?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for spring training, it's different for every guy. I think in past years, you know, I've I don't want to say I'm maybe a little more established now, coming off a better year, but I've had my ups and downs, and sometimes you're coming into camp and you're really fighting to make a really good impression, or make a team at the end of the day. So you maybe come in, maybe a little closer to mid-season form, or you feel like you started the off-season process a little bit earlier to make sure you're hitting on all cylinders by the time you get to the start of camp. Not that I'm not at that level right now, but given ending last year hurt, this year is more of a priority of pacing myself, kind of coming into spring training, and then going into the year. It's all about maintenance. Your game come in the off season, whether it's in the weight room, a new pitch and whatnot. It's a lot, obviously, more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's more difficult to make those types of changes in season. So for me, it's all about maintenance. making sure the high intensity days stay high and the low intensity days stay low, just to give yourself a chance to recover and bounce back each time. But starting and relieving too, because I've done both. Starter, you get more control of your schedule, which is nice. The workload, the volume is definitely higher just because you're throwing more innings, and your pitch count's higher and whatnot. Um, but as a reliever, I think the frequency obviously is the main thing. You're pretty much almost available. If you're a high leverage guy, especially, you're almost available every single night. So making sure you just do enough to kind of be ready, because at the end of the day, when you get, the lights turn on, you get between the white lines, that's what matters. So, just want to get your body prepped and ready to go and primed kind of for that night. And I will say, being in the bullpen, especially during a playoff push, and in the playoffs in 2024, that was an adrenaline rush I've never really had before, being in a high leverage spot like that. You get an adrenaline rush as a starter, but when you're coming into late games, tie game, trying to hold a lead, that's an adrenaline type of feeling I won't really ever forget. And I think that helped me coming back to starting last year as well, just because as a reliever, you get about an inning or so. So you don't really have much time to waste. So I think for me, going back to a starting role last year, it just helped me break the game down into little segments. Like, let's say you throw a 6 inning outing, just 6 1 inning outings, and you're attacking those as a reliever and really getting after it from there. So it's nice to have the perspective of both. The preparation obviously is a little different given what type of role you're in, but it's always I'm just glad to pitch in whatever role I have.
I do like that you compared the starting to the relieving.
Just because I did stuff last year as a starter or the year before as a reliever doesn't exactly mean it's going to translate into this year. Every year is different. Every year proposes new challenges and new obstacles to overcome. So I'm looking forward to facing those as we go forward. But given how my career's gone, I've kind of been in every single possible role you could think of. Open games as a reliever. I've opened games obviously just as a normal starter. I've been in a bulk role out of the bullpen, long relief. I've closed a couple games. I've been in high leverage setup roles. So it's kind of fun to think of all the different, just about everything you can think of for a game I've been involved with. So that just you learn from those experiences, both good and bad. And I think that's something that it's been really valuable for me in my career, and I'll take those lessons with me going forward.
To me, that means they trust you, and that's always a good thing where they can plug you in wherever they want to, and they trust you to go out there, do your thing, and shut them down.
For sure, yeah. I guess you can kind of equate it to maybe like a utility player, utility position player who can play everywhere on the field. Obviously, I would love to continue being a starter, but at the end of the day, because I've filled so many roles, you never know what the future may hold.
I want to quickly dive back into earlier in your career for a little tiny bit. Let's
Mhm.
start off with your high school years at Archbishop Mitty. They've produced some other incredible pro athlete talent. You got Aaron Gordon, NBA champion. You got Mitch Haniger,
Mhm.
another MLB All-Star. What impact did your high school years have on your career, and how do you think they really promote that widespread success in athletics?
Yeah, of course. MIDI for me was great. It's a very highly competitive place, being in the heart of the Silicon Valley. Like you mentioned, some of the athletes and just some of the classmates I had coming through there. I still have a handful of people that I keep in touch with there, both still working at the school or just my classmates and my peers. But it's a highly competitive place, both athletically and academically. So I think it just prepared me well going forward. Had to manage my time well, and really developed a good work ethic coming out of there. And you see other athletes like that. Obviously those guys are a little bit older than me, but I was around there when Aaron Gordon was there. I know Mitch as well, and seeing those guys kind of pave the way. Um, before me, and then the guys that have followed after me as well. That's what it's all about. But seeing them work and how diligent they were with their craft always inspires the next generation. That included myself, and like I said, the guys after me as well.
Then you went to Stanford right after that, a major league three-headed monster on that team. You played with Nico Hoerner and Kyle Stowers, both of guys who are, all-star caliber players. The fact Nico didn't get it is disgraceful, by the way. All three of you had over three WAR in this past season. What was it like playing with those guys and seeing them achieve major league success as well?
Yeah, it was incredible. We still keep in touch to this day. College is some of the most memorable times you have, both as a student and as a student athlete. But playing with those guys, you're waking up early in the fall, you're playing inter squads, you're taking classes with them, so you get to know them really, really well. You spend so much time with them, and similar kind of thing to the high school. Like those guys are such diligent workers. They're so um, motivated to get better and better each and every day. So as a pitcher, seeing it, obviously they're hitters, but as a pitcher, like seeing them, how devoted they are really inspires me and motivates me to work kind of at that level every day because, we're all on the same team. Like we don't want to let each other down because someone's not working hard or someone's not, learning from a lesson or a game or a prior experience they had. So you always want to, make sure you're there for your teammates, pick up your teammates. And yeah, when I was there, like we had like a number of guys, both on the pitching staff and on the position player side that have been in the big leagues or at least made their debuts. So it was a really loaded team. Um, you know, those are like I said, those are some of the greatest experiences I've had. On a baseball field.
I assume you did some kind of inter squad thing at college and got to face Nico or Kyle. I also assume you've probably faced Nico in the pros. I feel like it'd be very weird if you hadn't. What's been the difference you've noticed in their craft from Stanford to the pros?
Yeah, I think just the maturity as hitters. I mean, Nico's always been wise beyond his years. Kind of what you see now is how he's always been. Super athletic guy, super smart, high IQ baseball player, like can do pretty much everything on a field. And that was the exact same way facing him in inter squads. I can't tell you, like, I don't remember at bat for at bat because it was a little while ago now, but I have faced him. It was actually my second career start. I was pitching against the Cubs
Whoa.
in the COVID season, and he was in the lineup. Actually, that's the only time I've ever faced him in the big leagues. Um, but I think I want to say he was 0 for 2 or something like that. Maybe I think I did face him in 2024 out of the bullpen. It was one at bat, so maybe two or three at bats to go off of. But like I said, a super smart hitter. Obviously, the resume speaks for itself at this point, and he's such an important piece to that team. And Stowie, I do remember him. He did take me deep in an inter squad in college, and I think he probably still has the video on his camera roll saved somewhere. But he was great. Like, I just went to his wedding this off or a couple off seasons ago, and but he's it's really great to see how he's developed, getting an opportunity to play every day in Miami. Really happy for him. He's such a great dude. He was actually, not many people know this, but he was actually a two-way coming into college as well. So
Mm.
he was a left-handed pitcher for a little bit, but like I said, just the maturity that both of those guys have shown, and as you get more and more bats, under your belt, you get a better understanding of your approach, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and just how pitchers are approaching you as well.
Pretty good major league talent getting to face an inter squads. That must have been pretty good for the development.
For sure, yeah, it prepared us well, and I know a lot of guys can probably say the same.
I want to go back to now the modern day. Just go back to Kansas City Royals. You went from one of the lowest chase percentages in the league as recent as 2023, and then you jumped to the 89th percentile this past year. So you went from the bottom to top 10% in the entire league. What adjustments did you make to make such a crazy jump?
Yeah, there's been a lot of change in my career. I've changed just about everything you could think of, from my delivery to the arsenal, different pitches and whatnot. So for me, the biggest thing on the chase perspective is, I think, just adding pitches that move a little more unexpectedly. I think my first couple of years in the big leagues, and you know what I know now is a lot more than what I knew then, and that certainly helps. But it was a pretty simple pitcher. It was just four seam, kind of a straight circle change, where I was trying to pull the string and get a big velocity difference, and then kind of a slower overhand curveball. And it was fine, especially against right-handed hitters, but I had a tough time against left-handed hitters. And all that. And those pitches worked in the minor leagues. They worked in college. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to get some of the best hitters out in the world, sometimes you need to, change your game a little bit and bring something new to the table. So 2022 was a pretty rough year for me. Both on the field, obviously, mentally that was tough too, just going through struggles like that, especially in the big leagues because you want to do well when you're up there. So after that, kind of reevaluated a lot. We had a kind of a new pitching team that came in. We shared some thoughts back and forth, and I came into 2023. The arsenal was different. I added a slider, just a
Mm.
smaller breaking ball. It was a little more horizontal. I didn't really have a specific shape in mind at the time. But for me, I just wanted something that could command a little bit easier, get some more swings on. And then I changed the grip on the changeup to change the seam orientation to a two seam from a four seam and whatnot. If I'm getting all physics on you, but that year I got cut short, obviously with the elbow that bled into 24. Came back as a reliever, kind of with the same mix. I did add a sinker because I was starting to cut my four seam a little bit, not by design, but just naturally. So I, threw a one seam sinker off that. Didn't use it very much out of the bullpen. Used a little more last year. I'll plan to probably use it a little more this year. But um, long story short, yeah, the changeup started actually getting more drop coming into 2025. I know the kick change has kind of been in the sphere for a little while, kick change and now splitters and whatnot. So I'd say mine's sort of a hybrid between those two, just because it's a soft kind of kick grip on the two seam, but I get more maybe splitter movement profile now. It's like I've cut actually a little bit of the horizontal, so it's
Mm.
on any given day. Probably I think last year was probably like average, probably like 0 and 10, zero vert and 10 horizontal, 10 11, something like that. So not like a true running kind of changeup taken off to the arm side, but something with a little more depth. And when you get depth from, I throw from I wouldn't say a high slot, but like, a normal 3/4 slot. But when you get that kind of depth from, I guess, from that slot, it's a little bit unexpected. So that helped kind of with the chase because that pitch can be, I could start that pitch in the zone and kind of let it dive down. Hitters still commit to it. And then the two breaking balls, I call it a sweeper now. In 2023, when I mentioned I had that slider, it was actually the same grip I throw the sweeper with now.
Mm.
Um, so I just kind of renamed it because I added a smaller slider to kind of bridge the gap between everything else in the arsenal. But the sweeper, it gets a little big at times, sometimes a little too slurvy, a little too depthy, which is actually a focus right now in camp. But for me, being able to command that pitch in and out of the zone, got a lot of swings as well. And if guys chase that, then so be it. Some early in the count, I'm trying to throw that in the zone. You get to a two-strike count, you can try to get a chase. And then the little slider as well. I just think it tunnels better off my four seam, especially to right-handed hitters, where you can throw kind of like the changeup. You can throw that strike to ball, to get guys to commit to it, and then by the time they commit to it, it's diving down below the plate or below the zone, kind of on top of the plate. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that the arsenal's changed. My thought process has changed around how to attack the zone as well. A little more forgiving. I'm not trying to dot corners here and there. I'm a little more forgiving because I have enough in the arsenal to kind of give myself a margin for error in and out of the zone. So hope that, yeah, that's a like I said, long-winded way of answering that question, but um, you know, it's something I'm passionate about, obviously, and look forward to making continued tweaks. Pitchers do that, make tweaks and different things like that going forward.
I want to keep mentioning the same kind of idea, different question, but same
Mhm.
idea. So, one of my best friends is a southpaw pitching in college ball right now. When I told him I was interviewing you, he sent me a couple questions. He was like, "Yo, I need you to ask this to him." So, I'm going to hit you with it. As a
So
lefty in particular, have you had to adjust your pitch selection and sequencing throughout your career as you adjust to major league hitters?
yeah, I think so. I think the way the game has trended over the last several years, especially even the last 5 to 10 years. I didn't have a slider until 2023, or really used my breaking balls that much until 2023, 24. So I think being comfortable pitching backwards, that's something I really had to learn how to do. Using maybe your off speed early and then finishing guys with fastball up late. Or I'm not like the hardest thrower in the world, but the fastball seems to play up at times with the movement, with the deception, with the other pitches in the arsenal. So for me, getting comfortable throwing off speed pitches for strikes is huge. I think that is kind of a non-negotiable for any high school. Obviously, it's a little tougher. Some guys can just ride with one or two pitches, but when you get to college, when you get to pro ball, like being able to throw multiple pitches for strikes, especially if you want to stay as a starter, is essential. So I think getting comfortable with that was a huge focus, and I think just attacking the zone. It's cliche to say, but strike one is so important. First pitch strikes. You can even if you go look at my Statcast pages and whatnot, like the first pitch strike percentage has increased from let's say from 20 to 22, where I consider myself kind of a different pitcher to what I am now. Like, the zone percentage is different. The first pitch strike percentage is different. And they've all increased. There's still obviously room for more and them to increase even more. But I think that's always a good place to start. I mean, strike one is always the most important. Get into two strikes as quickly as you can because everybody loves strikeouts, especially nowadays. But if you can't strike anybody out until you get to two strikes. So however you may get there, whether it's through foul balls, whether it's through takes or called strikes, or even if you guys put balls in play within the first two or three pitches of an AB, then so be it. You'll take your chances. But I think those two things have been a huge focus for me, and just trying to keep the game simple because pitching, baseball is hard, pitching is hard, hitters are so advanced, especially at this level. So any kind of competitive edge you can get by keeping the game as simple as possible, I'm all for it.
I'm nowhere close to you. I washed up in high school ball, but even then, my coach was telling me always attack the zone early because if you attack the zone at the end, the hitter knows you're trying to get it there and can just launch it. So he was always like, start the count 0-1 and go from there.
hmm Yeah, I think anytime you get ahead in the count, it just sets you up for success so well. I think any hitter will tell you like, hey, I feel like we got to one strike, two strikes in the blink of an eye, and then they're on the defensive. And then you add in the fact that if you got multiple pitches you can throw, it's yours for the taking. Like that should be a free out, whether it's through a strikeout or a weak contact, something like that in play. Like there's, you get to two strikes, you take your chances and the success you have. And you see across the league, the best pitchers in the game, they pound the zone. They're relentless in the zone. They're attacking. They're putting the pressure on hitters to make swing decisions. Obviously with good stuff behind it. So, do yourself a favor and get in really good counts.
I love that. Just always the pitcher's mentality is what I love to dive into. I love to see what it's like on the mound, especially against the major league level talent. It's always great to
Mhm.
hear what different pitchers have to say about different mentalities.
Oh, for sure. I think that's one of the most enjoyable things about being just in baseball in general, but especially at the pro level. Like you have so many guys who have experienced so many different things. We have guys that have played here, played for other organizations, played overseas in Korea, Japan, or in the winter leagues in the Dominican and Venezuela and Mexico. So you get all different types of perspectives and guys who've been through a lot, even on our coaching staff as well. So I think being able to blend those things, pick their brain, and take those experiences and be able to maybe implement it in your game is always something that is really, really, really enjoyable about this game, and really enjoyable about pitching as well.
I love that you mentioned those other countries because that segues perfectly into the final question. Obviously, a big topic right now is the World Baseball Classic. The Royals are sending 14 players to the World Baseball Classic, including, Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez, Seth Lugo, so many other guys. Have you had a chance to speak with any of them about what the opportunity means to represent those countries?
Yeah. So I think obviously it'd be a thrill to play in the WPC, and I'm been looking forward to watching them here in a few weeks. I think getting to speak with them, I think it's always an honor to represent your country or a country that you represent. Um, just because those opportunities don't come around very often. And I know Bobby participated in the last WBC. Obviously this year he's probably going to be hitting lead off and kind of leading that lineup. I know there's Team USA is stacked this year. Is probably the favorites next to Japan or the Dominican, but yeah, I think anytime you get to see your teammates, especially on that stage. Obviously, I'm biased probably towards the U.S., but I think anytime those other countries, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Dominican, Japan, Korea, like you always want to watch quality baseball too, and I think those countries obviously offer that, and it's even more special when our guys get to participate in it as well.
I was tasked with writing the World Baseball Classic power rankings for my school right there. Turned it in last night. I put the USA at 1, Dominican at 2, Venezuela 3, Japan 4, Mexico 5. I think were my rankings. So
And I'm excited to watch. And I know the last World Baseball Classic was a really enjoyable one for fans and for players watching too, just because it came down in the final moments and seeing the Otani Trout battle and whatnot. And that's hopefully we get something like that again.
I can hope. It'd be a good time to watch it. Starts in just about a month. I'm excited to see it get going. But that's going to do it here for this episode 76. Kris, any final words from you?
Appreciate you having me on. I always love talking baseball, pitching, and just life in general. So you had a lot of great questions, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's going to do it here, episode 76 of the Playoff Push Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jack Dobbins, and have a great rest of your day.